right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world and on the planet. Coming to you live from Long Beach, California, another version of Visionaries and Truthtellers. I am the host and producer and creator of the podcast. My name is Anthony Carter. And as you all know, I am always, what's the word I'm looking for? Politely and lovingly stalking people on Twitter that I feel are doing really great work for humanity, for the planet, moving us all forward as human beings. Today, I have Miss Carter. How do you pronounce your first name?
Alrinthea.
Alrinthea?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're related because I know she's a great person because we have the same last name. I want to do some digging with my parents and find out. You're in South Carolina, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna find out. I'm sure there's some kind of connection. If your last name is Carter, my last name is Carter. So I'm gonna let Miss Carter introduce herself. Give us your 30-second bio and let's get started. Welcome.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Alrinthea, and I am currently a writer for a Black Lady sketch show on HBO, the greatest sketch show in the entire world, in case you didn't already know.
Okay.
Currently in South Carolina, just transitioned over to a career in writing from working in higher education for a long time. And so it's been really fun to kind of discover being in a new industry and being able to be creative all the time
Okay.
and having a good time. And then, other than that, I'm a photographer, improviser. I play a pretty good drum kit, is what I like to tell people all the time, because it makes you look really cool. And Prince and the Muppets are two things that I will fight you over.
Well, good. I have to say, yeah, that's worth some fisticuffs. Because I used to love the Muppets and I always watched them every Friday. They used to come on Friday nights in Detroit where I grew up, and was a serious Prince head for a long time. Like he's one of the folks, one of two or three people I think when I was in high school who literally saved my life because I found it was okay to be different and talented
Yeah.
and out there, and like people would respond, and I think when you're 15 or 16, you need to see that. Like, oh, you can do that?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so we'll come back to Prince and the Muppets in a minute, but I want to jump right in with a couple other things that you said. The first thing I want to ask you about, I was looking at your bio, and I have questions, but something that you just said that kind of struck a chord with me. So you're writing for HBO,
Mhm.
which is both based in New York. I used to live in New York City, so it's based in New York and LA primarily. How are you able to do that and make a go of it in South Carolina?
Basically, because of quarantine, honestly, I think that a lot of the opportunities that I've been afforded over the past couple of years
Mhm.
have been a direct result of regular life being interrupted. Like,
Yes.
I don't think we have an actual phrase for, I guess, the good things that came out of that. Like, I think I've been sold on collateral benefits, I suppose,
Okay.
but once everything shut down, and for me, I was working full time, but I was also performing improv 2, 3 times a week. And so when all of that was taken away, I had more time to focus on taking screenwriting classes and learning from different improvisers across the country, and taking advantage of opportunities to work for TV shows that I've admired forever. Because if this was in 2020, I would not be able to afford to move to LA to start a new
Mhm.
job. And so that's been the real blessing of that. It's just
Okay.
everything that I've been able to do and focus on, because life took everything pretty much away. You know what I mean? So
Got it. Got it.
yeah.
Yeah, I was very curious about that because I know we call at my job, my day job, we call it the lost years, and it's like and we're still in it, right? And
Yeah.
we're not out of the woods yet. And I'm always fascinated with how an event can happen, something can happen to a group of people or two different people. One has this response, I'm
Hmm.
going to use this to really get good at this or hone this, whatever. Like I started making films during quarantine. Like I went to a
Yeah.
program, started doing documentary films, started a production company, and it was something I've been wanting to do for a while. And I was kind of like, well, why not now? Like, I'm working from home, I'm learning this stuff online from home, taking classes.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested in how some people respond to it. They go left and like, okay, I'm going to make this work for me and really dig out those old dreams and dust them off. And some people just, became Chicken Little and oh my God, it's the end of the world. And I went through that for 6 months. I went through the whole, this is the zombie apocalypse. I'm
Yeah.
gonna eat whatever I want to eat. I'm not gonna go to bed at night. I'm gonna be just completely, because I was like, well, I'm just waiting for the zombies to come to Long Beach. But I'm not gonna do anything constructive. And then 6 months into it, I thought, no, I don't know how long this is gonna last. And now none of my clothes fit. I don't even have any clothes for, not even my ties didn't even fit to be able to go to work in. I was like, oh no, we got to turn this sinking ship around. So then I started doing, I went vegan. I started eating differently. I retaught myself how to cook. So I knew how to cook before, but I taught
Nice.
myself how to cook. I cooked twice today already. So I'm just always interested in what gives you that spark and gets you going. So with that in mind, one of the things the main reason that I reached out to you, um, in addition to the fact that we have the same last name, so we're related and you're farther along in your career than I am. So that's good. In addition to that, there was a lot of stuff that I was reading that you had written that I was just blown away by, right? Reading
Yeah.
things about like there was an essay you wrote about like being proud of yourself. So I want you to talk a little bit about
Mhm.
that and think about it. And if you wouldn't mind, think about it this way. One of the things that I wrote down when I was rereading that essay was this permission. So how did you gain or acquire the permission?
Mhm.
How did you give yourself the permission to do all these things that you're doing? Because most of us don't do that, right? Or we do a little bit
Yeah.
and get freaked out and stop. So can you talk about that
Mhm.
essay and talk about giving yourself permission to be great and talk about being great?
Yeah, I mean the essay on being proud really kind of came from the fact that I noticed that I would tell a lot of my friends like I'm really proud of you, you're doing this, you're doing that, and it made me think that grown-ups, adults, we don't have people telling us
Mhm.
that. You know what I mean? Like usually it's like, oh, you graduated from high school, or you got into the college that you wanted, or you got your first job. I'm really proud of you. But sometimes when you're 38 and you just figured out how taxes work,
Right.
sometimes you want to know that someone is proud of you. And I think
Right.
that it's part of just being kind to each other. Like that's a
Mhm.
big thing to me. It's being kind to each other and being kind to ourselves. And yeah, there are some things that really suck about a variety of things.
Right.
But I think if we remember that, you know what, if it doesn't have to be anything huge and it doesn't have to be anything tiny, but if it's something that makes you feel good and is helping you be more of that person that you want to be, then that's something you definitely should be able to be proud of and brag about yourself, So for me, it really took kind of coming out of a really dark place
Mhm.
to, and this is something I'm open with, but it takes coming out of that to figure out that you can give yourself permission to do what you want. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like as long as you're not hurting somebody or
Right.
hurting yourself, if there's something that you want to do, there just do it. Now, there's always like different privileges. There's money and there's time.
Mhm.
But I think that if you really want it, even if you think I can only do it during this hour in a day, if that's something that's helping you be a happier person, then for me personally, I'm giving you permission to do that for yourself.
Okay.
And, that combined with me turning 40 was just like, oh, I'm 40. I'm still single. I don't have any kids. I'm not rich, so people think that single people have a lot of money. I do not. I was working for in higher education. It was like, well, it's not going to get any. There's nothing that's going to hurt you by just reaching out and doing it. And
Mhm.
that's when I started taking my first writing classes, and that's when I started taking improv classes, and those are two things that you really have to kind of put yourself out there for, because rejection and notes and things like that are a big part of that. And so you have to be able to say like, I'm allowing myself to do this, even if it means I'll fail, and but if you love it, if you're happy, who cares? I'm not going to become a professional drummer, at least not now. But me allowing myself to take drumming lessons at the age of 40, I had a blast. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you're having a good time, just do it.
Okay, folks, you heard it here.
No, I was a sermon. I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I love that philosophy. I think, most of it, I was reading something yesterday, and something said, I don't even know where it was, and they were talking about limitations. And they were saying the only limitations are the ones are self-imposed, because the world will already tell you what you can and can't do, right? And then if you choose to listen to that, and then you take that on and like, okay, well, you're probably right, I shouldn't do it. This is a crazy idea. It's like my husband and I, we've come up with this plan that's kind of kooky that we're getting ready to like roll out. We started rolling it out. And he was talking, we were talking about it yesterday. He was like, oh, have you talked to your family? I said, no. I said, because I'm not right now, I'm really not interested in hearing anybody's opinion on any of it, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, well, you should do this or you shouldn't. And these are the reasons why you should. I don't want to hear any, I'm not interested in entertaining any perspectives on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they'll find out about it when I feel it's time for them to find out.
Yeah.
Which usually means it's already done.
Right. And I think like if you've already given yourself permission to do that and you feel confident in it, the people whose opinions should matter to you are gonna support you in doing what you want to do, and so yeah. I mean, and for me too, I was getting jealous of my friends being able to travel all over, and I had to think of myself like, but who told me I couldn't? Yeah, it's gonna take me a little longer to save up to do that, but no one said that I could never do that because I'm supposed to be an adult here. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, favorite Prince song. Let's shift gears. Favorite Prince song.
Oh my God. Without question, The Beautiful Ones.
Or album.
An album?
You said The Beautiful Ones?
The Beautiful Ones is my
favorite
song.
My God. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I listen to it all the time. I think I would say my favorite album isn't even because of the album, it's the cover. And for some reason, I'm blanking on what the actual name of the album was. But when I was a kid, I think it was like 6 or 7. I have to like verify that. But it's the album where Prince is naked on a flower.
Love Sexy.
That's what it is. And I was like a little kid, and I was like, I don't get why he's naked on a flower, but he seems to really get to do whatever he wants, And I was at that time of my life, my biggest inspirations were that Prince cover, which I didn't understand why you want to be naked on a flower, Boy George, because I thought he was the prettiest man I'd ever seen, and Oprah, because her hair moved. And so I was a very aesthetic 5 or 6 year old. So that's where I'm coming from with that.
When you write a book, that has got to be like the title or a title of a chapter, one of the essays, Oprah's hair, Prince naked on the flower, and Boy, that's an essay title. There's something to that. Because when you said, I'm following you thinking, yeah, that makes sense.
It usually tracks. If there's something that's like a riot of colors, some sort of glitter, have some drag queens in there, that's what I was like as a 5-year-old. I was basically that person.
That is wild, because I remember when that album came out, and I think there was a big deal because I think the Black album had come out before, but he pulled at the last minute. And you could only there's only like 500 on the planet. And I managed to get one because I was dating somebody who was a Prince fanatic. And some kind of way I finagled and got this Black album. I still don't know how I did that. That was like 30 years ago. I don't know how I did that. But that was like a major coup for me. Like I was like, I got this Prince
now, was
album.
it on CD or cassette?
It was a CD.
Vinyl?
It was a CD.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was, and like I say, and I remember getting it, and I don't even know. That was just a testament to either my stupidity or my ingenuity or just something. Wherever I was in that point in my life emotionally.
Yeah.
But I made it work. I made it happen.
I love that.
Yeah, I've been listening to Sign of the Times a lot lately. And I've
Yeah.
been listening to the one that came out between Sign of the Times and Purple Rain.
There's
That has
1989,
tambourine
Saturn.
on it. It has America. Um, it's got the Middle Eastern influences on it. I can never think of the
Yeah.
name of it.
They all kind of blend in my head now.
Paisley Park is on there. Raspberry Beret is on there. I can't think of the name of the album. And I had wait a minute. You know what?
Am
This
I like
this
the
is how
worst Prince fan? Because I'm like,
this is how we're gonna do
what's
this.
that?
Here we go. I was like,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I said, why am I wrecking my brain and sitting right here looking at the back of the that's sitting on my desk? Because I'm like, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Around the World in a Day. Yeah,
Yeah, Around the World in a
yes. So
Day.
that
So
one,
great.
yes.
And
And
I feel like Raspberry Beret is a song that I was like, oh, I've always thought it was really cool. But I think it's like I've only reason to be like, this song is amazing. Like
right.
it's just awesome. It's great to have an artist like that where in different phases of your life, like
Hmm.
he will have something that makes sense to you
Oh
or
yeah.
will speak to you. So
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
can track him even before that when I was, before I was even in high school when he had on the G string and the boots. I'll send you my essays I wrote about Prince. And I have them. I wrote two essays about Prince, and I have them in this book that I wrote. But I have them on my website too, and talking about the thigh high, the stiletto thigh high boots, the G string, the uh trench
The
coat, and
neckerchief.
and
Yeah.
this trench coat. And my parents like, oh my God, what is? Because they didn't know what that was. Like, what is going on here? And we're trying
Yeah.
to tell our parents, that's Prince. Who? Like, why is he naked? He's not naked. But yeah, when you're 14 and 15, you need these images. This representation is super important. I'm
Yeah.
gonna send you that stuff if that's okay with you. I'll send you
Please do. I
the
am
link.
always, yeah, I feel like it always felt, it's like weird to say, but I always felt like there's an emotional connection to him.
Hmm.
I've seen him twice. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see him
Oh yeah.
live.
Hmm.
I was at his last show in
Okay.
Atlanta. And whew, that was something. I mean, not even knowing if, of course, at that time, you don't know it's going to be his last show, but it felt like a show that I'm glad was the last live print show I would have seen
Right.
because it was totally different from the
Hmm.
other show I went to and anything I'd ever seen. Because it was the piano and a microphone tour. So it was just him and a purple piano just singing songs, and it was
Wow.
like the best recital I've ever seen.
Right.
The best piano recital you've ever seen.
Yeah. I was trying to. I remember he put on an album in 2004, and I was
Mm-hmm.
living in New York, and he was coming through New York, and I was, doing uh willing to sell pints of blood. I was like, come on, people, I need tickets. What are we doing here? And while I was working in Starbucks, and my manager, somebody had given him something happened with some tickets. I never forget this. And he's like, oh, somebody gave him some tickets, and somebody said, I forgot what happened, but he was like, oh, well, he said he had prayed and God told him he needed to go to the concert. I said, yeah, well, I'll talk to Jesus. And he said, hand him to me. I don't know. So we're gonna bring that up. I'm like, I can. So yeah, Jesus
I
told me
love
to hand.
it.
Yeah, I was like, don't do that. I wouldn't do that. Don't do that. So yeah, we'll have to um talk about him at a later date and more extensively.
Yeah.
And there is a void since he's been gone.
Yes.
There's a void. There have been people who are good that have come out, and there's just like when Stevie checks out, there's going to be a void. A
Yeah.
major, and I don't see anybody coming up down the pike like, oh yeah, he's like that. So we'll deal with it. We'll soldier on. We'll soldier on. Okay, tell me about this TED Talk. Before you say that, I
Yeah.
was watching your TED Talk. I saw you on Twitter. I reached out to you, waited, and I think you hadn't gotten back to me, and then you got back to me, and I said, well, let me check her out. So I was, went on Twitter, went to your website, saw the website, and when I saw that website, I was watching your TED Talk at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, two Saturdays ago.
I
I
love
was
it.
just, I read your stuff, and I was just like, oh my God. Then I went to the TED Talk because I want to do a TED Talk, and I'm when I saw yours, it clicked for me, the TED Talk I want to do. Because I've been
Oh,
talking
nice.
about it for a while and I couldn't figure out what do I talk about this, do I talk about that? And it just like everything kind of was one of those magical moments where everything kind of gels and you
Yeah.
get this clear, like clear as a bell, like, oh, this is what needs to happen. This is what I'm gonna do. I just gotta figure it out. Right. But
Yeah.
I know the end result. So I said all
I
that
love
to
that.
say I wanted to talk about being proud. I'm proud of you for the TED Talk. I watched it. The thing that really moved me that I remember one of the many things that really moved me was the talking about taking the pictures of the abandoned houses and these
Hmm.
stories and how these houses contain there were lives in them, right? And they
Yes.
contain stories. And that's when it clicked for
Hmm.
me about what I wanted to do with my TED Talk. So talk to me about the photography and the whole concept, which I thought was absolutely freaking brilliant. Of yes, there are stories have lives in them, and I mean not stories. Houses have lives in them, and these
Hmm.
lives have stories, and these houses contain the stories. So even
Yeah.
when they're abandoned, empty, or whatever, torn down, there's where do the stories go? Right? Where
Right.
are these people? So talk to me about your inspiration for that and the whole thing about that, because I thought that was great.
Yeah. So uh I've been a photographer for a while now, about 20 years,
Oh,
but I didn't really focus on abandoned spaces as like my main thing until after college and having the time to think and going on these long drives to figure myself out. Like when I was in college, I was selling headshots to be able to, pay for gas in my 91 Toyota Tercel. So that was the big thing there. And I think when you are looking for these places, or if you find these places, they're typically in a spot where it's completely isolated. You don't really see them that well if they're covered in, growth and things like that. And you have to make the effort to seek these things out, seek these
hmm
places out.
hmm
A lot of them sit, forgotten too. And so for me, when it came time for me to start kind of planning my TED Talk, and I don't know if all the TED Talk groups are like this, but they set you up with like a coach and they help you get to the root of what you want to say,
Okay.
because you only get like 12 to 15 minutes
Right.
to speak. And so it's like, do you want to speak on just photography? Like, can you talk about abandoned houses for 15 minutes? I can, yeah.
Mhm.
But people want to know about you, about
Right.
why you do this and what it means to you and things like that. And so I was able to, one, talk about, hey, there's this like subsect of photography that people don't really know about, or they certainly don't expect a Black woman to be doing. Um, and focusing on things that have been left behind, especially in the South. I mean, in the South, people will live in a house for 4 or 5 generations. The house could be falling down and they'll build another house right next to that. And so there's an embarrassment of riches of old
Okay.
houses down here. But it's kind of like a Southern thing too. Like you hold on to your past, good or
hmm
bad in the South. You hold on to your past, but that's part of the story of who you are and what you've made out of that background and your past to make your future a little bit brighter or darker, depends on the person. But for me, it's just really, and this is something I kind of see myself as a writer as well, is getting to the heart of those stories and seeing like, what happened to this family in this house that's filled with clothing and cassette tapes and a calendar from 1989. They must have left in a hurry. What was the story there? Why did they
Right.
have to leave? Where did they go? Why did they have to leave all their things behind? And these are the stories that I want to know about. And that just translates to how I like to get to know people as well. So with the TED Talk, it gave me that chance to really, one, introduce people to me, people that I knew for years didn't know that I was dealing with depression or anxiety.
hmm
They knew about the photography stuff, but they didn't know that part because we're taught to keep that stuff inside, like an abandoned house. So there you go. But it just really kind of gave me a chance to tell people who I really was and what I think about and how I see the world and how I view myself as a creator and how I, what my relationship to being a Southerner is, and what that means to me. And so that's all one big pretty package.
Okay. I was going to ask you, it's one of the things that I found when I was, doing some research on you and reading different things. And, there was a shot of you that you had with this young white guy, I think when you were in college, and you were talking about, being beautiful um,
Oh, being
what is,
beautiful and not knowing it.
right. And I
Yeah.
kept thinking about, and I always think about, and I've been going back for some reason the last year, I've been going over and over in my head this whole concept and the bluest eye, about
Hmm.
how this little girl thought if, and how troubling that is, and how
Yeah.
that if her eyes were blue, certain things would be happening to her. And that's really
Hmm.
code for, if I were white with these blue eyes,
Right.
I wouldn't have this ugly life. I could be,
Hmm.
and the whole thing with her consuming the candy and trying to like almost trying to take on a persona of this little girl.
Yeah.
So I said all that to say, I was reading, looking at um, all the content you have, and the wonderful thing is that I can see commonalities because that's just what I do. It's a gift and a curse. I see patterns, right? Even when people say, "Well, that doesn't make any sense," I'm like, "That makes total sense." If you just look at it this way, But one of the things that I wanted to highlight, and want to hear your take on is you have a number of different lenses you see things through, right?
Hmm.
Black, female, Southern, um, educated, very well educated. Now you're in this crazy world of entertainment, writing these sketches for these, as I told somebody yesterday, I was telling them about you yesterday. I said, well, yeah, I'm there's a whole pack of folks that are getting ready to be the next Issa Rae. And one of them I'm talking to tomorrow. I was telling a friend of mine, I was telling my accountability partner yesterday. And I said, so look her up. And I gave him your name.
Oh,
but
nice. Thank you.
wanted you to talk about um, how do you reconcile the different identities, and
Hmm.
how do you determine which one, and let me phrase it this way, and how do you determine, like with me being black and male and gay and in my 50s, middle-aged, married to a white guy, grandkids, growing up in Detroit, having lived, I often have to figure out many times in a split second which identity is going to be driving the bus. Like which part
Hmm.
of me is going to be in charge for whatever I'm up against at any given moment. So my question, so I guess it's kind of a two-part, like how do you reconcile those different identities, and when and if, and or maybe you don't do that, or how do you decide who's driving the bus at any given moment? Or maybe you don't do that.
I think it's something that I do and that most Black people do without even thinking about it.
Mhm,
I mean, there's always that, there's code switching
mhm,
where you're one person at home and another person at work. But I think that it even goes beyond that. You have your different groups of friends and there are friends that you may trust with more of those inner parts of you, and other friends who are, I guess you just call them acquaintances, just know you on the surface.
mhm,
They don't know anything about you, don't know anything about your family. They don't know what you do, how you sleep at night, or why you can't sleep at night. And so you're showing these different faces to different people. And I think it's just something that is a learned activity too. I think there's also code switching, but I think also as Black people, I think that we are conditioned by society, the world, to not be too proud of ourselves and not be too big for our britches. And
mhm,
so I think we internalize a lot of things, and it's not just bad things, but it's good things too.
mhm,
We always have there's always a saying like you have to work twice as hard to
mhm,
get half as much, but we don't share that double time. We just share like, oh, I'm just a person that wants to come to work and be left alone and do my thing, but they don't see the additional labor that you have to
mhm,
do to be even like a regular person that goes to work. And I
mhm.
think everything that happened in 2020 really woke people up to that. It's like, oh, I can't go bother so and so in her office because I'm bored. she's not even here. She's at home. So I have to
Right.
deal with my own, like,
Right.
I don't have a ready-made Black person to ask questions
Right.
about what they think about, everything that's going on. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think that's just kind of a learned thing that we have to do. But I think that with people like Issa Rae and Shonda Rhimes and Robin Thede, is like they're making it possible for us to be like, no, I'm awesome. I'm pretty amazing. I can do all of these things. And you
Mhm.
could call it Black excellence, you can call it whatever you want. But I think we're finally kind of coming into our own with being like, like, hey, we are literally good at everything.
Mhm.
And we could do whatever you want. And we don't have to hide it to make someone else comfortable to do that. It still happens, of
Mhm.
course. Like you're just like, all right, I don't want to deal with it. I just want to, but now everyone is just so proud of themselves. Like I
Mhm.
said before, they're so able to be able to puff their chest up a little bit more and talk about the things, and being in writing, TV writing, you have to be able to talk about yourself more, which is
Mhm.
something I'm learning to be more
Mhm.
comfortable with. Like I'm used to just kind of like putting my head down and doing the work. But
Right.
now it's like, no, people want to know who you are because that's how you get jobs and that's how you get put on shows and things
Right.
like that. And so you have to kind of break that cycle um, for yourself.
Well, I think it's funny that you should say that because somebody just sent me an email about an hour ago. This another guy I know who's in the business, who's a film and he does films and I think he does TV. And it's kind of like, what I'm finding, you talk about code switching, what I'm finding and what I've found in the last 3 years, I've been writing a lot. I'm in writers groups. I'm from theater. But in the last 3 years, I've been doing a lot of screenwriting. So I've got a mentor and I'm doing so I'm with a group of people and everybody is starting to like ascend a bit, right? This one's getting an
Mm-hmm.
agent. This one is, somebody they placed in a contest, whatever. And so I'm watching all of this. And one of the things that I'm really grappling with that I've just decided, okay, it's just what it is. It is what it is. I'm looking at there are things that make us really great as creatives and as writers, right? Because they want to know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk to people who are producers or in this field, when you're on a TV show, you can spend a lot of time with people. So you want to know it's somebody you can get along with for 12 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
for a number of days in a row, right?
Yeah.
So they want to know. So it is about not only the writing and the work, but okay, who's the person behind the work? Is this somebody I can have a conversation with,
Mm-hmm.
outside of just the work? Do you have a life that you're bringing to this project, or whatever? And
Yeah.
what's really funny is that what the struggle that I'm having is most of us, the few of us that might be lucky don't have this situation, but most of us are in day jobs where they want you to leave all that at the door.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to produce X, Y, and Z. I don't want to hear about some story that you're talking about. Like to me, Oprah's hair moving, Boy George and Prince being naked. That makes perfect sense to me. That would be a great We could talk about that for hours. That's a great conversation. People may not necessarily want to hear that at Clemson, right?
Right.
They're like, okay, well, I want to get my grades and I want to know why my money is here for financial aid. You know what I mean? They have different priorities. So I think a
Yes.
lot of times what I'm finding is I'm really learning how to, like you said, give myself permission and be okay. Like, okay, yeah, I am awesome. I do have life experience. I have been writing for a long time. I've lived all over the world. I've lived in Japan. I've gone to Greece. I've done all these different things,
Yeah.
and those are all the things you want to come into the room with in these kind of
Mhm.
settings and creative settings. But we get taught in day jobs, nobody wants to hear that, right?
Right.
So it's a I'm learning how, like you're talking about yourself. I can do it in these kind of settings, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like I most jobs, with the exception of a couple jobs that I've had, most jobs don't want you to do that. So you learn how not to, you unlearn that behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you have to relearn it when you decide you're going to be creative.
Right. Yeah. Or you don't have anything in common with your coworkers, like, working at Clemson and I worked there for such a long time. But for me, like, I'm kind of the outlier in that people usually move to Clemson to retire or start new families. And so the majority of my friends there were, young families and people that are like, you know what, I had a good time in college at Clemson, had a blast. But now I want to be able to have fun and take my kid to club baseball or whatever,
Mhm.
which is fine. It's not my bag, but it's fine. But for me, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to do an improv class, or I'm learning how to play the drums, or I think I'm going to go to Cuba this year.
Mhm.
These are things that are completely foreign to
Mhm.
someone that doesn't find those things not even really interesting, but those aren't their priorities. And so
Right.
being the only one that has those kind of different interests and priorities, you're
Mhm.
kind of like isolated a little bit. And so for me, it's like I became like the Stanley of our office, like on the office. He was just like, I'm here doing my thing, and I'm going home and getting in my bath and having a glass of red wine. And for me, it's like, yep, I'm here doing this job. It can be really stressful. I'll say hi, I'll be cordial, but I'm out because I got rehearsal, or I've got to develop photos, or I got things to do, and this
Right.
is not my whole entire life. And so that's kind of like a flip side of that too.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to let you get back to your Sunny, but I do have some more questions for you.
Yes.
I want to do I'm going to try to get through all of the seven. We may not, that the wonderful Viola Davis did in that podcast that I mentioned before. And I would love to keep in contact with you,
Yeah.
send you some stuff, watch your stars ascend. And I can say, oh my gosh, she was on my show. So be sure and
Who
take my
knows?
calls. Don't change your phone number. That's my plan. I'm changing my number as soon as Shonda, somebody calls me, I'm changing my number. I've already told everybody to know. So don't get on my
Goodbye.
bad side. Yeah, don't. Yeah, you will not get the new number. I've told people that. Okay, so here's some questions. So the first question for you would be: What relationship, real or fictionalized? What relationship, real or fictionalized, epitomizes love to you?
um, I would say my parents.
Okay.
They've been together for 45 years. Their 40th
Mhm.
anniversary was just this weekend.
Oh, okay.
And my dad was in the military, my mom was a teacher, but their behaviors that were modeled for us. I have two sisters that I didn't really realize were a foundation I should want to build on until now. Like my dad irons my mom's clothes every single night before she used to
Mm.
go to work. She's retired now. Um, he does the grocery shopping. He scratches her scalp. He does everything for her, and it's not even something like she's forcing him to do. He's just his love language is acts of service, and I was able
Mhm.
to see that in him. Um, just as growing up, but then they realized it was a thing that was unusual that other people don't necessarily do until now. And so that's kind of where I see that. I mean, they've been together since afros and bell bottoms, so
Another fine book title.
yeah,
I think
there you
Sinbad. I
go.
think that was Sinbad's. One of his tours is called Afros and Bell Bottoms.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Okay, what question would you most like answered?
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I mean, I think all the questions I've had, I've tried to answer myself. uh, who's the person I got to email to let me get into Prince's vault? I don't want to take anything. I just want to see it.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't see what it looks like. Is it like the rest of Paisley Park? It's a mystery. You
Okay.
know.
All right. All right. When and or where were you the happiest in your life?
Oh, that's a good thing. Okay, so I mentioned before I went to Cuba for a week, right?
Mm.
This was during the Obama administration, and everything stopped after that. But I had this like alter ego that my friends call Havana Al. And in Havana, I was tipsy on rum every day, having a great time, swimming, and just like enjoying life. That's probably the happiest I've been that I can think
Okay.
of. You
Okay.
know, yeah,
Okay.
that and touring Paisley Park.
Okay.
But I feel
Wow.
like I cried most of that. So
Well, that could have been tears of joy. See, you never
yeah,
know. That could have been, you could be I've had those experiences where you're so overcome with emotion, and
Yeah.
people think once again, folks in this country, we tend to think that things are good or bad,
Yeah.
and if you're having an emotional outlet, there must be something wrong. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, I'm a healthy emotional being, so yeah, this might be something right I'm doing.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a
okay,
release.
don't get me started on that. Okay, what quality do you least like about yourself?
I would say that I'm always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Oh,
And what I mean by that is I'm type A, I'm a Capricorn, I'm an Enneagram 3, and I'm an eldest daughter. So all of those things kind of combined in a person is like create, achieve, do all the things.
mhm.
And I find that I what I want to work on is I don't allow myself to enjoy each win as they're happening. I'm just like, all right, I achieved this. What else am I going to do now? Or I got hired on this show. I guess I got to get an Oscar next. Like you never stop, and
Okay.
so that's what I want to be able to be like, things aren't going to fall apart. Like things aren't going to, if you try to relax,
Hmm.
you're not going to lose anything by relaxing and not trying to achieve. And so I'm always like, but what if I don't write today? Will I never write on a show again? Like, things like that. It's all or nothing thinking. But yeah.
Got it. All right. What person, place, or thing most affected you?
Huh. I would say
Let me rephrase that. Not most affected. What person, place, or thing or experience altered your life?
all through my life.
Yeah.
I would say so. I grew up in Europe, and after college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so my parents at that time had moved to South Korea, and typically, if you don't have a job, you move in with your parents. That's what I did. Except my parents lived in Asia. Um, and at the time, it was like, being in college, that was my first time living in the States full time. And so having to leave that, I was just so sad that I didn't have like a path that everyone else was following. And, I was at that point, like mental illness was starting to be an issue at that point. And so I was
Mhm,
discovering that, like, what is happening with me, right?
mhm.
And I think that at the beginning of it, I saw having to spend a year in South Korea was the worst thing I ever had to do. But at the end of it, it was like I was out of, the I was on the side for a while and got to just focus on being with my family and learning about myself and having new relationships. And I had that was my Christian phase for like 6 months. That did not last. And just kind of like trying on different things and
Mhm.
figure out like who you, because you're meeting all new people who don't know you from Adam, and you get to kind of discover who you are in their eyes. And
Mhm.
so that year away was great, and it helped me be able to go to grad school and be comfortable with going to therapy and being more honest and upfront with how I was feeling and being and looking for authentic friendships and
Okay.
relationships and things like that too. So that's kind of like, I feel like that's when things kind of got started for me.
Okay. Okay.
There was definitely another, 10 years ago, it all bottomed out. But I feel like you always kind of make, that was like the first valley that I made myself out of. And then a few years and you go back again. But that's just life anyway,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, my next question is very much along those lines. Can you talk to me about or tell me about something you created that you were in that valley? It was dark and ugly, and you kind of crawled your way out of it, or you created something that was really
Hmm.
wonderful, magical, and powerful during that time.
Huh. I would say, I don't know. That's a good question. I think that the biggest thing would be my photography is like letting my emotions and how I was feeling kind of inform how I created how I captured photographs.
Okay.
Instead of going and thinking like, oh, I'm gonna take a picture of this like an older lady's hands because it's just a really cool black and white photo to have. For me, it's like I am someone that's dealing with all these things and seeing my own mortality. I would rather see the person's face or learning more about that person than saying like, oh, this hand has textures and textures look great on film and let's do that. It made me go deeper and see how people are and what people think and how these photographs affect me emotionally. And seeing myself as an abandoned house that just wants people to find me and remind me that things are beautiful is it was life changing for me.
Okay. Wow. I do have one more question
Sure.
along this list, but I want to take a little side trip here, a segue. You mentioned therapy,
Yeah.
and what I want to talk briefly about, I think my take on it is if you are anybody in this country, and if you are a person of color in this country, and you're a Black person, at some point you're going to need some. Right? Because
Yeah.
there's so much history. Even people who say, "Well, I'm successful. I don't need it. I don't want anybody in my business. I'm not crazy." It's not about that, right?
Hmm.
So, tell me a little bit about your. Um, tell me, do you think it's important for us to do it?
Hmm.
So, if you could rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate it, and why?
I would say I would rate it at a 10,
Mhm.
out of 1 to 10, because I think it's really important to be able to take inventory of where you are in your life. Even if you think things are good, you still go to medical checkups. You
Mhm.
still go and get your teeth cleaned,
And
and
your car
you're not
checked
losing
out.
your teeth. Yeah, you get your car checked out, you change the oil. I think that we have to start looking at therapy as a mental, as a medical thing. Like you need that to be whole and happy and joyful. And if you're not, you know why.
Okay.
And being able to talk to someone who has no obligations to sugarcoat things for
Hmm.
you. Having that third person is so valuable. And one of the biggest lessons that my therapist taught me was don't be jealous, don't be envious, be inspired. And that
Mm.
was like a light switch that went on for me. And it's basically like if your friends are traveling all the time and it seems like everyone is in a relationship or they have more money than you,
Hmm.
instead of like comparing yourself to them, be inspired by what got them to that.
Okay.
You don't have to follow their exact steps. I'm not going to be a business leader like with my best friends who makes a lot more money than I do, but I could see her for like the journey that she took from deciding that this is what she wanted to do
Hmm.
and the steps that she took to do it. And I could apply that to me as a writer, and looking at, the writers that I admire so much, like, okay, instead of thinking I'm gonna be Issa Rae tomorrow, I look at how she created her own stuff until people started paying attention
Right.
to her. Or, like Leslie Jones, she has a great quote, which is like, I'm not an overnight success. You just figured out who I was overnight. And so all that's because you're doing so much work in the background,
Hmm.
and everyone's path is not going to be the same. But if you see people that, if you see people you admire and you see how they got to where they are, that's going to inspire you to do what you need to do to get where you need to be. So yeah, but that's a long way of saying like therapy is amazing. Everyone should be in it. Everyone should be in therapy, and everyone should take at least one improv class. Those are
Yes.
things I very wholeheartedly believe. But yeah, therapy saved my life.
Okay.
It saved my life. It saved me from blaming myself for things that I wasn't, and working on myself and just being patient with myself
Okay.
and not thinking I had to be perfect. So
Okay, so I want to wrap us up. Oh, that was great stuff. We could be here all day. That was great stuff. So here's my last question, and then I'm going to let you leave us with some parting words, how people can reach out to you and contact you. So last
yeah.
question here, in the big seven. Last meal. So if you
Oh,
were gonna
my
have your
last
last meal, yeah.
meal. Oh, lasagna.
Okay.
No question.
The lasagna with shrimp, veggie lasagna, shrimp lasagna, what kind?
Oh, I want like a full meat lasagna with the ricotta in there.
Okay.
I just want to go out like Garfield.
Okay.
Like that's my last meal.
Okay. Well, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for joining me this Sunday.
Of course.
Um, hopefully South Carolina is cool. It's not hot there yet. It's getting hot here in California. Hopefully it's not too unbearable there.
Oh
Um,
no, this
let
is
tell everybody where they can reach you, where they can find you, where they can find your TED Talk, all of that. So give them your information.
yeah. So my website is arintheacarter.com. And on there you can see my TED Talk. You can see my blog is there. My photography can be found at southernfilter.com, and that's filter spelled with a PH. Everything I have there, my online store is there. If you want to check that out, I'm Alrinthea at all the social things. So if you want to see just how ridiculous I can get and what thoughts I put out there that I probably should keep to myself, Twitter is probably the main place. But yeah, I'm all over the place, and I'm here, and I'm just figuring out just like everybody else.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm gonna find out that we're related. I'm gonna give you a call and say, yeah, or I'll see you at a family reunion. Like, hey, wait a minute. So thank you for joining me. Have a great day. When this goes live, I'll send you an email, let you know.
Awesome.
All right. Thank
Yay.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.